Erin Kunst, massage therapist, marathoner, ultra-marathon runner, trail runner, among other things, joins the show to talk about her remarkable journey from hip labrum surgery to running a lifetime marathon best only 15 months later. And she talks about what it took to make that feat possible. Hey everyone, welcome back to AtoZrunning, where we help runners thrive. My name is Andy.
And I'm Zach, and you can learn all about what we do here at AtoZrunning at AtoZrunning.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube and Spotify, whichever and whatever place you like to listen to and watch podcasts. We're there. And speaking of places where we are also attempting to bring to you content of various sorts. And so don't miss the fact that we have sometimes topics where we're posting about how to benefit your running experiences, whether it's encouragement, inspiration, or information. We're also posting news and running information in terms of the world of running, and we do those in different episodes, and you don't want to miss it. We've got lots of different things going on in both of them of lots of different kinds of interests.
And this week, we get to have someone on the show, so let's get to that introduction. We are thrilled to be welcoming on the show Erin Kunst. We have a lot of ways our lives intersect. She's an A to Z runner. She's also a running buddy of mine. And we even ran at the same college, right, Zach?
We did.
Cornerstone University.
In fact, after college, Erin continued the passion for running that she has been cultivating over the years, and particularly expanding that passion into atypical aspects of the sport, such as ultramarathoning and trail running, among other things. In fact, she'll tell you that after her first ultramarathon experience, she was known to express significant dislike, if that's a strong enough word or phrase for it, in the experience. And yet, years later, she has continued not only with ultramarathons, but pursuing greater challenges and higher levels of competition. And Erin's going to share some of that with you here shortly, including things like 100-mile races or 100K races, multi-stage mountain runs, local 5Ks, 1-mile races on the track. Basically, Erin has done just about all of it.
And she podiums a lot, too.
And along the way, however, she received the unfortunate news about hip labrum repair surgery, which anyone, present company included, who has experienced those moments in time understand just the level of uncertainty and the fear that we experience as runners when we hear such things. And yet, when Erin was in the midst of inching closer to major marathon benchmarks, such as running under 3 hours, she finds out that she needs a major surgery. However, the journey does not end there, and that's one of the exciting things and part of why we wanted to share Erin's story today. 16 months later, Erin has not only picked up where she left off, but also improved, including lowering her marathon best to, yes, under 3 hours, and completing another 100K race with more on the horizon. So many runners are familiar with this journey. Stability, disruption, uncertain return. And today you get to hear from Erin and be encouraged and inspired by what it takes and how she was able to go from the lows to the most high highs, what that looks like.
Erin.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. I feel like it's a long time coming, but at the same time, it's perfect. It's perfect timing.
It is. That's actually one of the things I was thinking about today as I was mentally interviewing myself and preparing for this is 6 years ago, right? You guys started the podcast? I think I was a little bit egotistical 6 years ago, and I was like, I've done some really cool things and they haven't asked me on the podcast. And so I feel like this is good because had you had me on when I was full of myself, I feel like my information now would be substantially less accepted.
So let's tell people what's been going on, because you've been through this remarkable journey. So if people are here for nuggets, for tidbits, this is the right place. If you're here for inspiration, this is also the right place. If you're here to have a good time,
I'm going to start blushing.
It's the right place. here with Erin. Let's start like with a little background on like what running was like for you prior to surgery.
Oh, do you want the 5-hour version or the 5-minute version? Because I'm really good at talking. For those of you who know me, you're going to be like, well, duh, obviously. Those of you who don't, welcome to the club. I'm very good at talking about nothing. So the fact that I have something to talk about means I could go on for forever. So I'll say long story short. We'll see how that goes. I started running in 2010 in January. I did not believe in myself at all. I slowly graduated in mileage just because I like a challenge, and that's how it started. And I walked on to Cornerstone's cross-country team, and I expected nothing of myself. My goal was to make friends and travel cool places. And then Rod Worley was the coach there at the time, and he spoke some distance life into me, I think. He believed in me and thought I was capable of more than I was, and progressed to the marathon in my later college years, which is, the NAI doesn't have it anymore, but they used to. So I ran my first 2 marathons actually in college, and then proceeded to do an ultra event post-college. Promptly swore off ultras for forever. That only lasted about 4 years. Did a 100-miler in 2019, which is about the time I thought, I've done some cool things. You should have me on the podcast. And yeah, that was cool. But also, like I said, I mean, lots of people have done lots of cool things. You could interview every runner in Grand Rapids and they would have a great story to tell. So, and then, yeah, in 2022, I was training for CIM and I really wanted to break 3. July of 2018, I ran 3:07 in a marathon, and it was the first time I thought, I think I can do this someday. So I was going to give it a go at CIM, and halfway, it was the best I'd ever felt in a marathon. I was breathing through my nose, and I was running like 2:55 pace, and it was amazing, and I was on top of the world until about a mile and a half later when all of a sudden my left leg just stopped working. It's hard to explain unless you've kind of been in the position where your leg just doesn't do what you want it to do anymore. But basically what happened is I still ran a PR because I'd been so far under for so long, but I hobbled it into the finish and I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't know what this was. It had never happened before. And I promptly told Zach that I was going to sign up for Houston because Adam at Endurance Rehab, who I also go to periodically, was going to fix me. And so I actually signed up for Houston, which was 6 weeks later. And I said, I'm going to go and you guys are going to coach me through it and you're going to fix me through it. And that was, I think CIM was like December 2nd or 3rd maybe. And then I went for a run with you and Kim on New Year's Eve. And in about halfway through that 15-miler, it happened again. And I started asking you, when you had your labral issue, did this happen? And you were like, yeah. I said, what about this? Yeah. What about this? Yeah. Like, crap. So I did do PT, and I will say PT through the next month. I didn't go to Houston. I was smart. I listened to Zach and Adam, who both told me not to sign up for it. I was just stubborn. Didn't go to Houston. And then the next month I did all my rehab, and I was very, very, very diligent about it. I put running on a back burner for about that month, and then I really wasn't in pain, but I couldn't run fast for about 3 months. I had about a month and a half of I could turn over, and then after that everything shut down. And I could do volume, but I couldn't do anything under 8-minute pace, which, I mean, I know pace is relative, but like for me, 8-minute pace is comfortable, and so that would be what I would consider like the fastish border. And I couldn't, if I ran under 7:45 8-minute pace, I was wrecked for a week. So so I had my appointment with Dr. Weirks, and he promptly told me I should be done running until I had surgery, and I was signed up for like 7 races. So multiple I think 3 ultras, the trifecta, Riverbank, Bayshore, a Yankee Springs 50K in June. Like, I mean, I had this huge summer into September, and talked to a handful of people professionals, not just people who say, yes, run through injury, who said, per the surgeon, you've been like this since you were born. My femur head was very misshapen, which was causing the rubbing of my cartilage. And so because of that, they said another 4 months won't break you, but if your body says no, you need to be done. So that was kind of how I handled it. I actually made it through every single race until the last one, which I still don't like to talk about because it's my first and only DNF, and it really bothers. I can like my heart rate doesn't elevate anymore, and I don't like start crying, but it's still like it's still there. So this September, I will be going back to Margie Gessick, and I will cross the finish line this year.
Yes.
So it'll be good. But yeah, I kind of kept it short. I left out all the really fun details of my running life.
So you're all going to want to like reach out and ask more questions of Erin. For sure.
I don't know about that. My life probably isn't as interesting as I think it is.
So some of the signs, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's some people who are like, well, just tell me what some of those signs were. You mentioned one of them that during your CIM race, you just weren't able to fire the right way. And also, it didn't feel good.
No,
right? It felt bad.
No, that one, I mean, I had a little bit of a difference, I think probably early on, is that it was actually manifesting in my opposite foot. So for a long time, we actually thought it was a foot issue. And then when Adam started running tests, and to quote Adam when he ran me through the tests, he said, "There's no way your glute medius is that weak." Because he ran me through this test. He's like, "I'm going to hold your leg up in the air and let go. Hold it up in the air." I was like, I'm a marathoner. I can hold my leg up in the air. And I couldn't. And so he, there's no way your glute medius is that weak. It was. So, but originally I would say it manifested in my foot. And then once we started doing some glute strengthening drills, my foot pain completely went away. But my hamstrings were like on the verge of cramping like all the time when I would try to run fast, which is why I couldn't do that. So then doing PT, that was why I was able to get about 3 months of doing PT. I got about a month and a half, and I did run a pretty solid trifecta at Riverbank, and then I ran I think at the time it was maybe my third fastest marathon at Bayshore. So, I mean, I had a solid season in May for running fast. But yeah, I think the main factor was your leg just doesn't fire properly. And if you haven't felt that, it's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
When you have, as soon as you feel it, you know exactly what it is. But for me, part of it too was when I would sit, I felt like someone had taken a hole punch and like shoved it through the back of my glute, which is again a weird description, but it was like felt like I was sitting there and I just had a hole that you'd be able to just see right through my glute. That was how it felt. I had some minimal sciatic pain, nothing crazy. I just figured like, oh, I have tight muscles because as runners we do, right? But those were I think my two limiting factors mostly. I should have probably written them down 2 years ago or whatever it was now so that I would have a little bit clearer understanding or remembery of them. But yeah, those are the two that kind of stick out in my mind.
I think the great takeaway from that, because it doesn't matter what kind of injury, but that you weren't able to function symmetrically, and then also you couldn't do it without pain.
I think the really interesting thing too is when Adam told me when we started talking about it, I kind of laughed because earlier that year, one of my main like thoughts when I was doing steady runs was how strong my left quad felt. Which makes sense if you think about it because it was overcompensating for everything. I have a little bit of a leg lower to upper leg discrepancy in my right leg from an injury that I had in college. So my right leg never feels great. So my left leg felt so strong that I was like, man, I'm going to kill it. Like, I'm so strong right now. But it was so overcompensated. I think that was one of the things, that was one of the reasons I think my hamstring started to give, is when everything else just was slowly fading away. Things that weren't as strong were starting to pay the price. So
I think to paint the picture of how remarkable it is, this journey, right? I think you should talk a little bit more about your conversation with your surgeon and what he was saying about your future in running and some of the genetic stuff, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
No. So basically when I went in, it was May 1st of 2023. I walked in, they take x-rays, and then I got put in a room, and Dr. Weirks came in. And if you've met Dr. Weirks, he's a phenomenal surgeon, quirky guy, which I feel like all really smart people are a little quirky. And he came in and he's like, "So you're Erin, right?" "Yeah." He goes, "You're a runner?" "Yeah." "Yeah, you need to be done running until you have surgery." And I left that office and I actually called I think I called you,
Yeah, we
and I
talked
was
on the phone.
sobbing
Yeah.
because I had all these goals. But what he ended up saying over the next couple months I had my meeting in May with him. I didn't get an MRI until I think July because of everything we had going on in our schedule. And then in July, I had my MRI and my MRI follow-up. And, I mean, there was a little bit of fortune there in that when he talked to me in May, apparently the x-ray, for just the x-ray, showed the worst arthritis he had ever seen in someone that young. Like, the worst hips he'd ever seen. And I was like, yay, that's encouraging. Come to find out, in July, after I had my MRI, he was like, well, there are usually two reasons a hip socket looks that bad. One is severe arthritis, and the other is just you have abnormally deep hip sockets, and your femur heads are shaped improperly, so they don't fit far enough in, and then the socket looks different. He goes, it turns out you had the second one. And I was like, why wouldn't you have told me there was potentially two options? Like, I'm looking at this going, I'm 33 right now. I was turning 33. So I was 32, and I was like, I have severe arthritis. Like, that's exciting. But then after my MRI, what it basically showed, a quarter of my labrum was shredded, and it was because per anatomy, you have your femur, and you have your head of your femur that comes out that goes into your socket, which is what makes it your ball and socket joint. And it's supposed to narrow down a little bit into the femoral neck before dropping into your femur. And I essentially had no femoral neck. So my whole ball of my femur was just the ball of my femur with no narrowing. And because of that, it just didn't fit properly. And the funny thing is, my whole life, I've never been flexible. And everybody always told me, well, you need to stretch more. And per the surgeon, I was like, I wish I could call all my elementary school teachers and be like, because the surgeon was like, you're physically incapable of moving certain ways. So he said running did not cause this, but it's actually a good thing that you are a runner because it brought it to light. And with the misshapen way that your femur is to your pelvic socket, he goes, you probably would have been in here for a hip replacement in the next 5 years. So I was 37. I remember thinking, at 37, so I was 32 when all this happened. At 37, I would have potentially had a hip replacement. That's wild. So it was a good thing that running brought it to light, despite the fact that everybody was like, we knew that running would make you have surgery someday. Non-runners. So
I feel like everyone can relate right now to somebody in their life who has said, if you run that much,
I know. So
bad for your knees, bad for your hips.
The crazy thing is, I do feel like so when I went in for my follow-up in July, so he basically just asked me, he said, if your body tells you no, you need to listen. And I said, done, I can do that. And that's why when I dropped out of my 100-miler in September of 2023, I thought, I want to go in for a repair, not a replacement. Because if I ruin this so much because my ego is on the line, I want to run for the rest of my life. I don't want to run for the rest of this race, which it was a gut-wrenching choice to make because I wonder, like, well, if I had popped some ibuprofen, how would I felt, right? Don't do that. That's bad. That's bad advice. But that was, when you're in the moment, you're emotionally invested, especially when you're 16 hours into a race. You're just like, not quite hallucinating, but close, But yeah, so when I went in for surgery, he came in and he prepped me with everything. And then he leaves the room, and he pops his head back in. He goes, I gotta know, did you finish? Did you do them all? And I said, I did the first two, and I made about 2/3 of the way through the last one. But I said I had to pull the plug because I heard your voice in my head. And I said, and I listened, Doc. And he was like, well, let's get you under the knife and get you fixed up so you can get back to ultra running, which I feel like is a success for me because when I walked into the office, he was like, I don't like runners. Runners are too stubborn. Runners get injured. Running is bad for you. And so when he told me that he wanted to fix me so I could get back to it, I was like, but
it's a good feeling.
It is a good feeling. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like that's such a good transition because you were saying how I listened to you, Doc. Because I had the same PT as Erin for my labrum repairs, and they told me that Erin was the perfect patient So I feel like we need to discuss the rehab of this because I do think it's so majorly important for anybody who's gone through any injuries.
The really funny thing is Rob and Adam both, because Rob tends to do more of the surgery recoveries, they both told me they were dreading me as a patient because I was going to be bad. That's what they both told me. So, I mean, I'm sure they were partially kidding, but also were they? You know, so I don't know. I do think for me with rehab, I think I do have a little bit of a leg up on people in that, well, one, I've been training my intuitiveness at that point, for 3.5 years with you guys, I think. So, so I'm very intuitive with how I'm feeling and how I should be feeling. I mean, it's hard when you've never gone through something, but also you still know. Like, there's a sixth sense of I shouldn't be doing this, or, you know, I want to, but it's not beneficial. But I do feel like I'm a medical massage therapist. And because of that, I think I have a little bit more physical knowledge of the human body than some people. And so there are aspects of the recovery that were really beneficial for me, simply because I have probably a better understanding than someone who works in an office setting or is a new runner or a new athlete in general, whether, you know, doesn't matter the sport. But I was able to make some alterations. Not like, when I say that, it's not like I wasn't changing what they were having me do, but it was more like for PT, for Dr. Weirks and then Adam's and Rob's program, you are supposed to do PT twice a day. And there's very specific exercises each day that you do. And there were some days that I thought, this second set is not going to help me based on how I felt the first set, because Adam's rule of thumb and Rob's rule of thumb was you should not feel pain the next day. Like, anything that you do, you shouldn't wake up in pain. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of wiggle room there because you were punctured and scraped open, right? So, I mean, there is some amount of surgical pain, but you shouldn't be in pain after the first 3 weeks. I feel like it shouldn't be, because for Weirks' protocol, you're on 50% weight bearing with crutches. And then after that, you're allowed to walk per comfort level. So after that, the dog loved it because I was walking him every day because I was trying to build stuff back up. The PT aspect of it, I mean, it's very clear. And I think because, fortunately for me, I also knew people who had underdone the PT, and then I knew people who had overdone the PT, and both of them had hindered recoveries. And so I think seeing other people's maybe missteps really helped me, because then I knew that more wasn't better or less wasn't better. It turns out that professionals know a lot, so what they recommend is probably accurate.
I like that because we often can learn from people's stories. That's why we do the podcast and have people on the podcast. Mm-hmm. I think it is super helpful to be able to see what someone else saw that it didn't work or did work, and be able to emulate. What they were saying to me about Erin is that Erin was following the protocol and not doing, like, trying to do more than what they said on the given schedule. So for instance, Erin, because she was feeling awesome. So there are parts of the time I should let you share more of that part. Like, you were feeling good, but you weren't like, I'm gonna go and jump rope, or like these other little things before they gave her clearance to do so.
I think my focus almost the entire time, and this continued well into when I started running and even got up to full hourly volume, because we don't train miles and pace, we train hours and effort. So even when I was back to not necessarily workouts, but full volume hours wise, my standard for myself was just because I could doesn't mean I should, because the end game is not how fast can I run my longest long run so far this weekend. It's, hey, I have my sights set on a marathon 10 months from now that I would really like to perform well at, whatever that may be. Maybe that is just simply, I want to finish my first marathon post-surgery. Maybe, in the next 6 to 10 months, I'll be fit enough to run a really solid race and give it a good, solid effort. But the I have to have it right now mentality, it's very American, and it's not healthy. more than one area of life. So that was what I tried to stay focused on, is just because I can doesn't mean I should.
That is very good advice, and one that I've stuck to as well. Like,
I mean, you have to.
Yeah. You have to, because you can do a lot more than you should do.
Yeah.
When you come back
and it's so
from injury.
easy, because I mean, I will say the mistake that I made was when I started running, I was fresh, right? So I was doing like run walk protocols for 30 minutes. It was started, I think, with a 3-minute run and a 2-minute walk, maybe, was where I started. And I took pace off my watch because I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to compare to pre-surgery because I knew that it would be different. And so, you know, I'd go for my times and I'd split them, and then I'd get back. And I remember I think my husband ran with me for either the first or the second one. And he's like, what pace are you going to be running at? And I was like, I don't know, easy. And then when we started running, he was like, I thought you were going to be running easy. And I was like, I am, because I was fresh, right? Like, I mean, I was excited. The adrenaline was there. I knew I only had, you know, a handful of minutes to run. So I was like, and I think I uploaded and I was running like 7:30 pace, which is not good, but I think after those first couple, when I realized I was doing it consistently, I was like, okay, where are my clunkiest, heaviest shoes? Because they don't make me want to run fast. And so I intentionally started wearing shoes that were not fast to try and just naturally bring it down. And obviously, as I started to build up volume, which is kind of funny to think building up volume was, you know, every other day, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, you know, and I mean, it's where you have to start, right? Like, and I was so excited for those, except for the fact that I was coming back and it was winter, and it felt so worthless to put on all those layers for 30 minutes of running. But it was still, I got to do it, and it was exciting. So, but even, I mean, when the volume started building, even though it was only 15 minutes 3 times a week, it was definitely like the fatigue started to set in pretty quickly, because muscles that they'd been used but not really used, like it definitely started to kick back in, and I did slow down. But yeah, those first few runs back, I was a little over ambitious just because I was excited to be doing the thing that I love doing. So, and that was the whole point of surgery, right, is to get back to that. So yeah.
I just want to put this in perspective for you. So someone like Erin that has done ultras and also at this point had run really close to that 3-hour mark. So she's fast and she's also gone really far. For her to be able to be disciplined to follow those short run schedules and do the every other day, all of us have the inclination, right, to probably do more than we should and all of that. But I feel like I should just highlight an exclamation point that for someone like Erin, who is extremely determined and stubborn was the word that was used earlier, resilient.
Sure, I like that one better.
Resilient. Making that choice is what has allowed for her to continue into success, but also a very difficult choice to make in the moment.
Oh, it's so hard. You have to let people go. Like, I mean, you go to those first group runs, and first of all, everybody's been training all winter, and I hadn't been. So, like, my first long run, I think, was 60 minutes, which was, I mean, I run with a group locally here called Run GR, and typically they set up aid stations every 3 miles. So I mean, I basically went to the first aid station, and then everybody else went to the second and third and turned around. And I was like, okay, bye. It was nice to run with you for like 3.5 miles. Now I'm going to turn around. And Steve my husband was fantastic, because a lot of the times he would do those with me. He knew I was easing back into it, and he didn't want me to be lonely. So he ran shorter with me, and that was very wonderful. 6-ish months of workouts. And I had this goal that I'd been going after for almost 6.5 years come to a realization. And so that really kind of, like, it's humbling. Because you think back from surgery and you're like, oh yeah, I had surgery. Actually, I was thinking about that today. It'll be 1.5 years, the end of this month was surgery. And yeah, so I mean, 1.5 years is the number that comes to mind, but you kind of forget about, but my first run was 3 months later or something along those lines. And then I was kind of like, wow. And then another 3 months later was when I did my first steady, and it was 30 minutes. And I was like, so like I had no pace control at all at that point because I didn't look at my watch as far as pace goes, but it was still kind of like I had no idea what I was capable of, and so I think my splits were like 20 seconds apart because I just had no concept of consistency at that point, after having so many months off. But so yeah, 9 months, which that was pretty humbling.
So when you had that first study run and you were putting together your season, which I know you're a dreamer, so you're thinking about that even while you're on crutches, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't actually allow myself until I started. I think I allowed myself after a month of every other day running.
Okay.
I think after that was when I was like, okay, things have gone well up until this point, so now I'm going to allow myself to start looking. So I think it was February when I started looking.
That's good because it's probably a good tip. Wait to look at races.
Yes.
Even though you have so much time when you're not able to do as much.
Yeah.
But wait until you're actually running.
Oh, that
again.
was so hard too. Fortunately, when I had surgery, it was Chicago Marathon was coming up. Grand Rapids Marathon was coming up. Detroit Marathon was coming up. Kona was happening. So, I had these things to like cheer people on and be excited about. Sidebar, the really funny thing is I did so well on crutches, not being able to do anything. I watched all my friends have these phenomenal races, and then the moment that I fell apart and was like, I'm never going to be able to do anything cool ever again, was weirdly enough when I think it was the Moab 240 results started coming in, which is not a race I have really any desire to do at this point. And I was like sobbing because these people were doing these really cool things and I couldn't. And I was like, of all the races to set me off, like it would have been the one that I don't even really want to do. So I thought that was funny. Anyways, tidbits and fun facts.
Okay, so back to your story. So you're doing these workouts now.
Yes. And making
And just
plans.
because I think it's good for people to hear this.
Okay.
And I don't actually know what the first study back for you was like, that 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. But I am curious to know, if you looked at that study run, would you thought, oh, yeah, in like a handful of months, I'll be able to run sub 3 in the marathon?
No. Mm-mm.
That's what I thought you'd say.
No. I do remember it being faster than I expected it to be. I'd kind of figured I could probably get 4 miles. That was kind of my thought. Because that's, 7:30 pace. I was like, post-surgery, I felt like that was a pretty good estimation. Just because I had no idea. And if I could run 3 minutes at 7:45 pace for an easy run, I figured that was not out of the ballpark. And I think I ran, like I said, it was like a 20-second spread. So it was like 7:15, 7:0 something, and then maybe 6:56, 6:54 or something. Like I was surprised. I did run with the wind on the way back because I did an out and back. So there was a smidge of time on the way back. But yeah, I remember being very surprised at how fast I ended up running. But even still, it was like a pleasant surprise more than a confidence booster, really. Mm-hmm. So
you weren't trying to prove anything to yourself.
Although I did post about it on Instagram, and I what you see are paces, but what you don't see is this, because I was still a little bit, even though I don't train on pace, it's still something we're conditioned to recognize. So I did, I wanted to mark the moment, but I also had to caveat it as oh, but this was with the wind, and this was was into the wind, and this was without carbon fiber, which, I try not to do my workouts in carbon fiber now anyways because of adaptation purposes, but I didn't listen to any music. I just went exclusively on feel. Mm-hmm. But I did make an Instagram post about it, and I still did asterisk it, which we all have ego.
Want to do
yeah,
it.
We all have ego that plays in regardless of if we try not to. Yeah. It's just the way we are as humans.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so then from there,
yes,
you've already made your goals because you're now in training that is going to lead to goal races.
Yeah.
So talk us through your first race back. That's what I want to hear first. And then we'll talk about your season of races that you just accomplished at the end of the year.
So technically, I would say I consider the fact that I have two first races back, because my last run walk was the resolution run,
right.
which is a 4-mile run around Reed's. Reed's here in East Grand Rapids, and I'd never done it before, so it's a guaranteed PR, which I was pretty excited about. I had to walk every 5th minute. but it was so good to be back in the community. I had been with the community still because I had gotten on my mountain bike and I joined some group runs, but it's really hard to ride at like 8:30 pace on a bike. Like you don't pedal essentially, and it's like you'll at 2 pedals and then you'll coast, and 2 pedals and coast. But it was good to be back moving the way I love to move with the community. Love to move more because I do like my bike, but yeah, so I would say that was my first like kind of toe dipping back in, but then I had talked to Zach and Adam and Rob about a half marathon effort. We've been going down to Bentonville, Arkansas now for many years. I think we went down there for the first time in 2020, and we had some people get mad at us for that, but we were like, we're going down to mountain bike and run trails. Like, we're going to socially distance. So we've been going down there for at least a week every year since 2020. And in 2021, spring break week, the first Saturday in October, I discovered a half marathon there. And at that point in time, I think I helped pace a group. I wouldn't say that I raced it that year. In 2023, it's actually where my PR is set. But because of that, I wanted that to be my first race back. It's just, I love that community is a home away from home for me, because we've gone down there so much, and I've basically been adopted as an honorary member. And I love that race so much. So I asked if I could do that, and Zach basically said, for those of we all know that Zach and Andy are both coaches. Andy I consider more my friend because we were friends first. And Zach is who I actually talk to about coaching, unless he doesn't answer, and then I text Andy because she answers faster. So that's how I talked to Zach about whether or not I could do it, and he actually, because at that point I'd been doing like I don't say workouts because I was doing work. They were just shorter than I was used to previous to surgery, which as they should be. But he said I could run it comfortably aggressive. And so what I decided to do on that is not to look at my watch. I did wear carbon fiber because I was going to pad those numbers as fast as possible. But that was my first race back. I figured on a good day I could run 135, and I think I ran 132 something, which that race has the last 5K is all uphill. So I mean it's a fun course. It's weird, but like the 10th mile is like all downhill, so you run like sub 6 when you go out there. It's fun, and then the last 5K is like uphill. But yeah, that was my first race back, and that. I think I cried a little bit crossing that finish line because I still didn't think I was capable of running that. And that pace, because again, I'm conditioned still a little bit with pace. That pace the finishing pace was the same pace as my marathon PR, my standing marathon PR at the time. And I thought, that was the first time I thought, I might have a shot at this. Like, if I can do this without training, coming off of surgery, right? 6 months and a week and a day, for being specific, after surgery, I might have a shot at something this fall. But I also still was in that just because I can doesn't mean I should mentality. And I thought, whatever marathon I choose to run, it's still just going to be a victory because of everything I'd been through. I think that was probably, my thought mostly. Mm-hmm. So, and then a couple weeks later, 5 weeks later, I helped pace the 2-hour club at Riverbank. And that was another booster simply because 7:45s felt easy, which, again, I was in carbon fiber to make sure that I could help people achieve the goals they needed and give me a little extra boost. But it was still kind of like, okay. I was substantially more sore after Riverbank than I expected to be, so I did take some time off the next couple weeks, like just because I wanted to honor my body and what it had gone through and what it was still going through. And then into June, I ended up doing a lot of trail stuff just because the stabilizer builders that can be gained through trail running.
And during this time, I'm going to add another layer.
Okay.
So once you were done with your protocol,
yes,
from Dr. Weirks and the PT regimen that is required post-surgery,
yep,
you didn't stop doing
routines.
So
I'm still doing them.
Right.
Not as many. But
Maybe
still,
talk us through some of that, because I do think that that was a key factor.
what I was doing?
What you were doing / the importance of the routines and keeping that as part of your daily regimen.
So I think that actually almost goes back to pre-surgery and pre-PT work, because after CIM in 2022, going to Adam those next few weeks and into all through January and into February, I started realizing that to keep myself firing properly as needed at the time, there was multiple things he was having me do that were very specific muscle building exercises, and it was helping me feel really good. And if I didn't do them, the run didn't feel good. So I was doing a substantial amount, and by substantial, once you get the routines down, it's like 15 minutes maybe before a run. But it was to a point where I was cutting my run if I needed to. I wasn't shelving those to get the numbers. The numbers are not everything. Numbers aren't what make a runner. One of the questions that came in that I'm going to jump to before finishing answering this question, I'm good at talking in loops, was, am I back to the volume that I was doing pre-surgery? And the answer is no. I was doing 3 workouts a week when I felt good. This isn't the year that I knew I was going to have surgery. This is pre-CIM. I was doing 3 workouts a week and a long run every weekend. And a lot of times Sundays are typically my off days. And sometimes I was running on Sunday. So I was doing 70 to 75 miles a week. For numbers, because that's easier than hours sometimes. Now I'm doing maybe 60 to 65 because I'm not running Sundays. I mean, I'll take the dog for a 2 or 3 mile walk, but I won't run. As of right now, I'm not running Sundays, and I'm only doing 2 workouts a week. So I'm actually doing less, and I ran faster than I ever have before, at least in the marathon. So there's a sidebar for that. Numbers, just because the number is sexy doesn't mean it's what you need in the moment. You can do less and accomplish more sometimes. That was a huge realization for me. Back to the PT part of it. I had asked Adam and Rob post the standard protocol to keep giving me things to keep me staying strong. And so there was a handful of banded exercises that they were giving me. I would say now I'm pretty much down to the routine that you guys recommend, along with I do some glute bridges, which I don't know are necessarily one of the things that are specifically, but I do a lunge matrix, glute bridges. I always use my Theragun as a warm-up so I'm usually eating my snack before my long run, and I'm Theragunning everything. And then I texted Zach the other day, and I was like, hey, I just want you to know that I started doing the skip drills recently, and it's amazing how much better I feel. And in parentheses, I said, yes, it actually has taken me this long to incorporate those. Which is also a funny story, because in college, we would do drills, and when I graduated, I was like, yes, I never have to do drills ever again in my life. And then I started coaching with them in March of 2020. And it took me until this long to start doing them. So I'm not even close to practically perfect. But so I'm incorporating drills now, skip drills, and I do the lunge matrix and glute bridge drills. But I mean, firing things properly is kind of a big deal. And the older you get, the more important it is.
Yep. I agree.
But that doesn't mean you youngsters shouldn't do it, because good habits developed early stay good habits developed later in life. So
that's a nugget. I like that nugget. Okay, so
Sometimes
now that we've added this layer of
things.
Okay, she didn't give up on doing these routines
Yes.
and going to PT.
And I've added new ones. Skip drills.
There we go. She's even added skip drills. So that's a layer as part of this story. So now let's get back to your training and racing for your big races.
And when I started researching races in February, when I allowed myself to start thinking about the fall, because that was what I set my goal. As I said, I don't want to run a marathon in spring. Riverbank's going to be my longest. I had been asked by the race director of 906 Adventure Team, who is the race director for the race I dropped out of, that my husband has finished both of the times he started that race, 3 times now that he started that race. So that's a little bit of a competitive point in our household, is that he's finished 3 times and I haven't. But either way, he had texted me. I think he talked to me at a race that Steve had done in February, and he said, hey, will you run coach at camp this year? And I was like, but I didn't finish the race. And he's like, no, but I think you'd be good though. And I was like, okay. Like, and so
he wasn't wrong.
Well, and so I helped coach that. And I think that was like a 50 or 60 mile weekend, which was, I was concerned about that. And I told the athletes that I was helping, I said, look, if I have to take a step back, like I don't want to hurt your weekend, but I also have to prioritize myself. Fortunately, I didn't have any setbacks. I do think I took a recovery week that next week, which was probably necessary. But then I kind of stuck to the trails for a while because I just was really enjoying that. Zach had given me permission to do it because I was stable enough at that point that I wasn't a risk factor. I went to Colorado and Utah, and we were doing stuff out there. So that was fun because then I was like, I'm not going to do a text. He had given me a plan with workouts and everything, and I was like, look, I'm in Utah. I don't really want to do a steady state on the road when I can go run in the mountains. So I'm just going to go run in the mountains. And he's like, okay, but I mean, again, we do this because we enjoy it, right? And if something sounds more fun and you're aware that it might hinder your goal, like, oh, well, if you're enjoying doing it, like, that's why we do it. So I was doing that. I was hitting the trails. I came back. I was supposed to do Magic of the Mile. And then we got rained out, which was sad. And then we did the cross-country challenge. I did Road Trail Sand, which were both trail-esque races or cross-country.
You just grazed over that, but how about you, like, because you did cross-country in college.
I participated in cross-country in college.
But wasn't that kind of cool to, like, realize how like, good you are at this, like, really difficult course?
It was
we
fun.
ran faster courses in college, so I think
but I've got a way bigger base now than in college. I mean, we can make all the excuses for ourselves, right? And nothing's ever good enough. I feel like even no matter how well you do, you're always kind of like, oh, but I could have done this better. But yes, that was good. Well, I think I appreciate it more now because I've run trails, which I think really helped me succeed a lot in that race, is because, I mean, it was a cross-country course. Anybody who's in Grand Rapids, it's over by the Richmond Park area, and there's a substantial hill in that course. And I think my last K, I think, was my fastest, and I actually had a kick, which I didn't expect to because I hadn't been doing any really speed. So like it was encouraging. It was a lot of fun. I was like, maybe I need to run cross country this fall, and that just never worked out. So
because you had other big things.
I had other big things going. So I had committed and applied to a marathon in Maine. I have a bucket list goal to run a marathon or longer in every state. And so I had a very specific time frame of races that I was looking at, and that time frame was October. And so, and in a new state, and so searching the different ones, I think I had Utah, which I quickly wrote off because it was like a 5,000-foot descent, and I just didn't feel like that was sensible or comfortable. So I quickly nixed that one, and then Missouri and Maine. And the Missouri one was intriguing to me because I could win it. Like, historically, if I could break 3:05, which my studies were indicating I should be able to do, well, not at that point, I guess I wasn't sure. I was banking on the fact that I was probably going to run sub 3:05 or sub 3:10. It was the possibility for me to win the race was there. But also, per past results, the females were like 5 to 10 minutes apart. And I was like, I don't want to be alone. Like I'm, which is funny because that's exactly what happened in my main race. But you can only do what you can do. In the main race, if I podiumed, I had a chance to win money. So I was like, let's go to Maine. I also knew that I had committed to a 100K in February, which on the trails, because who wants to run a 100K on the roads? And that one I knew obviously was going to be hilly. So then I thought, if I run a hilly race in Maine on the roads, it's going to set me up better for the trail, even though it won't be as fast as I would probably like it to be. And I had done a ridiculous amount of course research on this race. There was nothing that prepared me for that race course. Like it, without any doubt, the hardest race course I have ever run, ever. Road marathon course. It was also top 3 most gorgeous courses I've ever run. So anybody that's looking for a gorgeous course, go to run Mount Desert Island in Maine. It's phenomenal because it's peak color season there. You run basically around Arcadia. It's absolutely glorious. But yeah, it was a very challenging marathon course. within the first 5K, 10K, I knew that I wasn't going to PR. Hindsight, it being what it is, I end up getting sick after the race, which is part of the reason. Probably the first mile felt so hard, even though it was downhill and I was carb loaded. But I was like, oh, that did not feel as good as I wanted it to. But I gutted through it, and it was a beautiful day. It was an absolutely gorgeous course. I got third, so I still got money, which was great. I also was beat by the female winner by like 20 minutes, but hey, we're gonna let that go. But just crossing that finish line, and I had intentionally done a lot of my studies leading up to that, practicing the last chunk of the course, because the last chunk of that course, the last 5 miles, 20 to 25 are basically all uphill. And then the last mile is a screaming downhill.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's tough.
Yeah. So I live up by the Mines Golf Course in the Grand Rapids area. If you know that, you know that O'Brien Hill. And it's not exciting to run up, but it makes for a great... I don't want to run up this hill in the last half mile of my study, but this is going to set me up for race day. So, and it's funny because I do a lot of visualization in my workouts. I set a goal when I came back from surgery to run as little as possible with aftershocks. So I don't run with headphones in my ears, but my aftershocks are my go-to headphone. And I decided not to listen to anything because it's an outside stimulus. You don't most of the time have that on race day. So I was like, why would I train with something that I'm not going to race with? So I started doing my steady states without anything. And it's amazing how in tune you can get with yourself. Like, it takes a while to figure out, but it's amazing how like busy nature is when you're not thinking about what's coming into your brain from some outside source. But yeah, so I set myself up, and all my visualization as I would run that second to last mile up O'Brien and then turn around at the top and come back down it were, you're racing for the win. You're racing for the win. You're side by side with the girl, and you're going to be stronger. You're going to be stronger. You're going to beat her. And on race day, I caught the girl in third at the base of the hill, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And so the funny thing is, I could tell she wasn't doing well. So then, of course, you try to like compose yourself. And then she took off sprinting, and I was like, I don't want to do this right now, but I trained for this. And so we raced side by side up that last hill, and it was the worst thing I've ever done. But it was one of the first times, followed maybe by the cross country challenge and then bridge run 10 mile, which we kind of skipped right over. But those are the first 3 times in my recent racing history that I can remember thinking, I have another gear. Which was exciting because I've never had that before. And when you have that in a race and you go, I can hurt more than you and I'm okay with it, like it's a unique place to be in. Mm-hmm. I hope everybody gets to experience that someday, because it's definitely like, as much as you don't want to dip into that extra gear, you also do because you're kind of excited it's there. So anyways, that was a fun happenstance for that race, though. Is like I had visualized that moment, except for I was visualizing it for the win, but I'll take it for third. So, and actually the really cool part was there was a couple other Run GR women who'd come out to do the half, and it's a point-to-point course, and so we started earlier than I don't remember. Either way, I caught the 2 ladies from Run GR, and they both had Run GR on the back of their shirt, so I was like, Run GR! And then, of course, I got like a personal cheering squad, which was really fun. So
I love that.
Yeah, so that was my first comeback race, and I was loosely disappointed in my time just because secretly I, of course, had wanted to break 3, even though I knew the course was not ideal for it. But I was still like, I think it was my 5th fastest marathon, and it was the hardest course I'd ever run, so I was like runner disappointed, right? Where you're like, you're proud of yourself, but you're also like, I don't feel like that was all I was capable of.
Yeah.
So
limiting factors from without, not within. But also the sickness, I guess, is kind of.
But I didn't know. And so I did not train for almost 4 weeks. Honolulu was 7 weeks later. I had told Zach, if Maine doesn't go well, being I don't PR was what that meant, I want to race Honolulu. And he basically was like, it's only 7 weeks apart. We'll see what we can do. Well, then when I got sick, and I knew at that point, again, the intuition thing, you have to give your body the space to heal. which I had been learning for all year, right?
Became an expert on it.
Become an expert on it. And so going into Honolulu, I took a PR off the table because I was like, I'm going to cross off a new state, and that's going to be that. Because I think I took the next week completely off. I might have run like 3 miles in Maine because I was in Maine, and I was like, I just wanted to run one more time. And I think, the next 2 or 3 weeks, I did not really run much because when I ran, I was so exhausted. My resting heart rate was so high, which is really the only heart rate I ever really look at is my resting heart rate. I don't train based on heart rate because of outside circumstantial factors. But yeah, the first time I ran hard, I think I ran one or two steadies, and they felt so bad. I just texted Zach. I was like, it's not worth it. And then at one point I had a steady on the calendar for a weekend long run. Like it was like a, 30 minutes up, an hour and a half, and then 30 minutes or something like that. And my friend Meg texted me. This was the week before Thanksgiving. And she said, hey, there's a trail relay race at Cannonsburg. It's 5K alternating laps. Do you want to do it with me? And I was like, that actually sounds fun. Like if you tell me I have to do a steady state on the roads, I'm not going to do it. But if you let me do a trail relay race, that sounds fun. And again, we do this because we love it, right? So I was like, if something doesn't sound fun, why would I do it? If something else sounds fun, even if it isn't directly benefiting what I'm training for now, again, I'd taken a PR off the table. So I was like, it's okay if it doesn't, but we ran that and we won.
That's fun.
We beat the men.
There
was only like two. There was only 2 teams, so it was like there's not really that much. So I guess they won too. But yeah, I mean, I finished that and I thought, that felt really good. Like each of my 5Ks was faster, I think, except for the last one because at that point I had a little bit of hamstring pain and I was like, I won't push this last one. But I think other than that, I did really well, and it was better than I expected to after not having done any workouts. But I was healthy again, right? And my body was like, I had recovered, I had rested, and Turkey Trot was 5 days later or something like that. And I had asked Zach if I could do it as like a workout, and I didn't. I said if I break, I think I told him if I break 19:30, it's going to be a good day because I hadn't done anything, and So asterisk it, I ran a road 5K PR because that course was maybe a little bit short that day. But that was the fastest I'd ever covered 5K on the roads. I'd run on faster on the track, but it's technically different. And I was kind of like, which I think I was 18:42,
it was fast,
maybe
folks.
45. I don't remember.
It would have been a PR anyway.
Well,
like whether it was like a little bit short or not.
I think my road 5K PR was like 18:52.
Okay.
So it was, 7 seconds faster. So I don't know. But either way, like I was kind of, it was faster than I expected is really what I'm getting at. And so I was like, that's interesting. So Honolulu was, I don't know, a week and a half later, I think at that point. And we had a call because we have calls the first Wednesday of every month, and everybody was asking me what I was going to do at Honolulu, and I was like, I'm gonna go for it until it's not there, was basically the consensus that I had come to at that point. And yeah, and we flew out to Hawaii, and it was 74 degrees at 5 a.m. on race morning, and I thought, there's no way. There's no way. It's 74 degrees. I've been training in the snow. I don't know if it was snowing at that point yet, but it was cold. Like, I wasn't training in 74 for sure, so.
Tell us about the race.
If you really want to get into it, I wrote a really detailed race recap on Instagram. I can share that. It's 10 episodes and an epilogue. But yeah, in the past couple years, I have not looked at my watch really when I raced. I decided to for this one for nutrition purposes, but I told myself I was only going to look at the mile splits to keep tabs on where I was. Because again, I'd taken a PR off the table, right? So I was like, it doesn't really matter what my splits are, but it'd still be nice to know. And then I wanted to keep tabs on nutrition and fluid purposes. And yeah, the first 7 miles, I think, were almost 6:40 on the money, like almost every single mile. Like I think I had one that was a 6:42 and maybe one that was a 6:37. And every other mile I think was 6:40, which I was like, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm writing a really big check. I really hope I can cash it. Like blowing up in a marathon is the worst. Like I've done it and it is not fun. So that was the hope and the prayer. And I didn't cross the threshold of questioning it until 22 or 23 miles. And at that point, I wasn't going to pull the plug because you can't. You're that close. The funny thing is that course is the only comparable course to the main course is the 25th mile is uphill, which I was like, deja vu. And at that point, I was questioning whether I was going to get it, but I was also aware that it was going to be very close. And I was cresting Diamond Head. So you, like, when you go out, it's like mile 8, you go up Diamond Head and you run down and there's like a popsicle and a couple like little out and backs. And then when you come back to the finish line, you go back up the side of Diamond Head that you descended in the first half. And there was a guy standing there clapping. I got quoted in an article actually, which was kind of cool. But the guy that wrote the article said, I think the last place finisher was like 16 hours last year.
Okay.
Like, wow.
That's cool that they don't do a cutoff.
There's no cutoff. So I think he had said in the article that the race boasts both the fastest and slowest marathon finishing times of any other course, just because almost no other course has no cutoff, so that was kind of cool because it was like a 2:08 and like a 16:37 were the buffers. But anyways, that's fun fact. But when I was going up the backside of Diamond Head, there's dozens, if not hundreds of people still coming at you, which is crazy because I was 25 miles in and they were 8.5. I was like, I'm so sorry. But, they're like screaming like it's so, and I was just like, it's so emotional, even though you can't do anything because you're like gassed at that point because you're going uphill, you're hot, you're tired. And they're like, if I had $1 for every time I heard myself called queen, I would have so many dollars the whole course. But yeah, and there was a guy standing on the sidelines and he said something along the lines of like, sub 3 is yours, go get it. And I almost burst, like even now it almost makes me cry because it was just like all these people are cheering for you, they have no idea who you are, like, and you're never gonna see him again. And it was the only person that I could acknowledge, and I just looked at him and I said, you're right, I am. Like, just because it was so close and my calves were starting to lock up and I was like, Lord, give me 10 minutes. Like, if you can give me 10 minutes, like, I promise, like, it'll be, and yeah, when I crested the top, I was like, if I can make up the time in the downhill that I lost in the uphill, I'm going to get it. And I did. And it was the longest straightaway ever, but and the sun was super high and it was awful. But like, it's the worst I've ever looked crossing a finish line. And it's funny because my phone had blown up when I got back to it. I had like 40 text messages or something, like it was wild. But Zach was one of the people that had texted me, of course, along with you and how many other people. But he was like, the question he asked me was like, holy smokes, you did it. How do you feel to accomplish this goal that you've been going after for so long? And it was funny because obviously I was excited. I was elated. Like Steve had hugged me at the finish line and I just like sobbed into his shoulder because it was a big moment. But I was also so mad that was the worst I've ever looked on any marathon. And it wasn't because I felt that bad. It was so hot. I think I was fatigued from the other marathon. I had not done any really long studies in between, right? Like and so like it was just like all the circumstances wrapped around. We should share the video because it's so bad. It's so bad. And so I was like, Zach, I can look better finishing a race. Like, I'm so mad. Like, I'm super happy, of course, and I can't believe I did it because I had taken it off the table, but I've never looked that bad and I need a redo. It was so funny. So, yeah, that was good.
Amazing.
But,
so how many years was it that you were chasing the sub 3?
The last weekend in July of 2018. I ran 3:07:32, maybe 33, 34, something like that, in a downhill marathon in North Bend, Washington, which, along with my main marathon, is probably one of the prettiest marathons I've ever run. Top 2, I would say. And I'd run 3:07, and I thought, I think I can do this someday. So almost 6.5 years.
And
I
then
think
to
January would have been 6.5, or February maybe, but yeah.
And then to do it less than 15 months after having hip surgery.
Yeah. Wild.
It is
I
wild.
still
It's
can't. Like, I
amazing.
still have a hard time thinking about it sometimes.
So what everyone wants to know is, Erin, how did you do it? And we've talked through like your journey, and then we've talked about like tidbits. We've talked about them, but maybe just highlight, if you could, a few of the key factors that allowed you to have success breaking this big barrier after surgery.
I think probably the first one you have to think about is like you have to give yourself grace. It's not a physical like action thing, but it's definitely a factor. You have to allow yourself time and emotionally like to grieve too. Like, I mean, grieve what is nobody wants to go through surgery. Like, even though I had 9 months to mentally prep for it, not quite 9-ish months to mentally prep for that, it didn't mean that I still wasn't mad about it. So you have to give yourself grace. I would say the first like truly physical actionable thing you have to do is be honest in your PT. Like, I mean, you can't overdo it, you can't underdo it. You have to, it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? Like, one was too comfortable, one was too hard, and the other one was just right. Like, and that takes time to learn, which then brings grace back in. A community, I think, is huge. Like, I mean, and community comes in multiple forms. Obviously, my running community is huge to me. My family is phenomenal. My mom came and took me to my surgery. My mom hates driving in cities, and of course, I couldn't drive after my surgery, so she very graciously drove me to my surgery. And then she came back. My surgery was on a Friday, so then Steve took care of me over the weekend. And then my mom came back, and my mom went with me to my couple PTs. And then she did PT for me at home in the morning, and then Steve did it for me in the evening. Steve took care of so much around the house, and I'm someone who definitely believes in the power of prayer, so that's nothing I could have done. But obviously I had dozens of people praying for me to recover well, which I don't diminish that at all. I do think that played a role for me. I think for you yourself, just being honest about what you're capable of and just being patient, like patience and grace, like, are underspoken about, because it's always what can I do, what can I do, what can I do? And sometimes it's about what you can't do. And you have to let other people do for you. So I could sit here and talk all day about it. But I kind of have been. This is going to be a long podcast. But
and we on runs have talked about it
yeah.
at length too. And that just like gave me chills that you said that, because I do feel that grasping and like trying to make it work for ourselves often will backfire, but it's sometimes our progress is in what we can't do and let others enter into that allows for us to make it.
It's not weakness to let others help you. It's actually a strength, because it's admitting you can't do everything on your own, and that goes way beyond running. Because we shouldn't be able to do everything. That's why the world has millions of people in it, and billions. I think there's billions of people either way. But you shouldn't be good at everything, because then somebody else won't matter. So allow people to help you. Give yourself grace. Be patient. Enjoy the comeback. Enjoy the learnings you get from it. Reach out to people. Oh, I think that helped me too, as I was able to reach out to people like you and Hope and Rachel who had surgery. And then the amount of people that reached out to me, it was a blessing, and I felt very humbled, because sometimes you go, I can't believe you're putting me through this, God. Like, what did I do to deserve this? And you question everything. And then I think months later, I had people like, hey, I know you had something with your hip. This is what I have. Can you talk me through it? I'm really scared. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why I went through this, so that I can help someone else. Because life isn't all about us. Like, it's you're one person, but like, you're so much in this big world, even if you don't always feel like it. So like, sometimes you go through something for someone else's benefit, which is a hard pill to swallow, but it's also so beautiful once you get to see that in its fulfillment.
Oh yeah. Wow. Deep stuff. Preach, sister.
Sometimes I'm really smart.
But then that's what we're doing right now. Then we can amplify the message of patience and grace, and also inspire you if you're feeling like things are hopeless because you have something difficult on your plate, like surgery.
Nothing's ever hopeless. There's always that's something too. You have to find the positive sometimes. Like you have to, if you feel hopeless, find something positive. Like even in coaching, sometimes you have to spin it that way too, of like, okay, this was the worst run you've ever had, or this was the, whatever. Find a positive in it. Like tell me the positives that came from this, even if it's something super small. Like, oh, I saw a pretty flower. Okay, well, you wouldn't have seen that flower if you hadn't gone for that run. Like there's always positives to be gleaned in every situation. Even again, if they don't directly come from the activity or the experience, like there's something positive that can come from every negative situation.
And maybe it's not even running, like you were saying, running related. So I have this difficult time in my life. I'm not able to run. Well, then I'm able to explore this other thing, or I'm able to go to more of my kids' soccer games, or snuggle Bubba a little bit more.
I did so many puzzles. I did all the puzzles in our house.
That's so funny. Well, we should get to this question. We don't want to forget this question.
Elaine. Yes.
Elaine. Okay. Elaine writes, serious question. How do you optimize recovery having a full-time job?
Which is a whole nother podcast, I feel like. I think, the sad answer is that you realize that we're not paid to do this. Like, it's awful. It's funny because I actually ran with Elaine this morning, so I'm touching my microphone. I ran with Elaine this morning, and I was like, I still haven't figured out an answer to your question yet. But, recovery in a full-time job, I do feel a little bit fortunate in that I can make my schedule. I do prioritize my clients and their need to schedule over my need to go for a run. So I do inconvenience my running schedule, but it's definitely easier for me because I don't work 8 hours a day, because I can't. Because 8 hours of massage would be exhausting. So I am fortunate in that, but I will say optimizing recovery with a full-time job, sometimes you have to give up running to sleep and to eat. Optimizing recovery, sometimes the sad answer is that we have to remember that we're not paid to do this. This is a hobby. It is not our full-time career. So sometimes your runs have to be sacrificed. Whether that be just cut a couple miles or minutes short, or given up altogether because you're just too tired after a day of work, sometimes that's the best way to recover. Food and sleep are good for healthy humans, and then runners are an added asterisk into that. I take vitamins that are pertinent to my health and per my blood draws. But which I do think is another thing. I think runners should get blood draws probably yearly. I don't know for sure. Talk to your primary cares about that. But we do ask a lot of ourselves. So there are levels of things that are lower. And I do think we should be aware of things like that.
I appreciated what you said about prioritizing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is a lot of the dance that we do as runners, and is one of your keys to success, really. Because you are able to be intuitive, but also prioritize needs. So let's say you have all these things in a day. Well, I'm going to prioritize my PT when I'm rehabbing, like especially the crucial few months after you have your surgery, or even into when you start running again. You're saying like, okay, you're exhausted. We're going to prioritize recovery over your running stimulus.
Yeah. Which could be a variety of things. That might be sleep, that might be nutrition, that might be Normatec boots. That might be spinning. Some people have indoor bikes. You could go for a gentle spin. I think, like I said earlier, like the numbers are sexy, but also you have to prioritize your sanity and your health, like over a certain number because you're on a streak, or this other person did this, which means I need to do that too. Like every person is individual, and recovery needs look different for everybody. Sometimes recovery could mean going to a group run instead of being by yourself. Like there are some nights, if I have to run in the evenings, I won't run if I'm by myself, like, because I'm tired. But if I, like, text someone or I know there's a group run happening locally, if I go to that, that's going to feed my soul. Now, I'm an extrovert, so that's a little bit different for me. Some people that would sound worse to them. But, again, you prioritize what you need in that moment. Maybe you've been working with people all day, and the worst thing would be to go to a group run. Then don't go. Like, I mean, be honest with yourself about what you need. And if that means no run, that means no run. I see it pop up from time to time of, like, a year is, 365 days. If you miss 5 days, the look of the graph per those 5 days missing you can't see the difference between those 5 days missing or those 5 days there. But if you force those 5 days, it could change the next trajectory because of injury, illness. Like, if you miss 1 day because you think you might be getting sick, that's better than 2 weeks because you did get sick. Mm-hmm. So be honest with yourself. Be intuitive.
Be intuitive. Be honest. Be like Erin.
And Andy and Zach's coaching. Because I didn't used to be this way. And now I feel like I'm preaching it to other people. Which is why I'm here.
Yes. Well, Erin, I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just was so geeked about this whole journey. And I've gotten a front row seat by being able to be texting about everything and following your running journey and asking Zach about your training.
And one of the first people that I got to run with on some of my 30-minute runs back, I'd be like, can you text me and only, or can you run with me and only run for 30 minutes? I'm really sorry, but I need to run with people.
So and I loved it.
And she'd bring her boys and drop them off in the YMCA.
And she did the same for me. So when she talks about community, it's a for real thing. And we're so glad you're part of this A to Z running community. That's why you're listening. So you're part of something here. And I want you to feel part of something. So if you do have more questions for Erin, they can ask them, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Keep asking your questions.
I don't have my notifications turned on the social medias because I am the type of person that will see the bubble and immediately have to respond to it and be unproductive in everything else. So it might take me a minute or a couple hours to respond back to you because I don't have notifications turned on. But I promise I will try and respond within a reasonable time frame.
And if you want to ask them to us, that we can ask Erin too and have, like, maybe a little bit more dialogue on the show too of, like, here's what Erin said about this, giving you an update. So just, ask your questions. Continue the conversation. We want to hear from you. We want you to be part of the community. And I'm inspired. I hope you are too. I'm sure you are after all of this conversation. And if you're in that low point, just know that there's hope. Yeah. And you might not be like Erin's story. It might not be a year plus in a PR, but there are ways that we can help ourselves thrive.
Yes. Also, sidebar, this wasn't really stated earlier, don't compare yourself. Like, everybody's goals are different, and if you don't want to run PRs, that's fine. Like, if you are having the surgery or any type of surgery or injury whatever your story may be, your goal doesn't have to be your best running self after that. Your goal can simply be to live a happy, healthy life. And your paces may look different than mine, but that doesn't make you any less valuable as a human, as a runner, as a community member. Comparison is the thief of joy. So please don't.
100%. And also affirming that maybe your goal starts as, I want to get through this prehab and rehab as well as possible. That's exactly what Erin did.
That's exactly what I did. One step at a time.
One step at a time.
So,
thanks again for being on the show, Erin.
You're welcome. It was fun.